Hi, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Business Over Brews. I'm excited because Paul and I are back in the studio, and today we're going to be talking about vibe coding. Be sure to stick around. Paul, thank you again for coming in today. We're really excited because we're going to be talking about a couple of new concepts here that have popped up since AI has really started to help in a lot of different use cases. First and foremost, we're going to be talking about vibe coding, which is really a great way for folks who are really not able to code, to make them code, but allow them to without the resources that are needed. So before we get into the conversation, I want to share a little bit about what vibe coding kind of is. And this is a phrase, I'm going to put my glasses on so I can read, that was really coined by Andrej Karpathy here. This is what he said. This was back, when did this come out? Back February 2nd. There's a new kind of coding I call vibe coding, where you fully give into the vibes, embrace exponentials, and forget that code even exists. It's possible because LLMs, example, Cursor, Composer, and Sonnet are getting too good. Also, I just like to talk to Composer with Super Whisper, so I barely even touch the keyboard. I ask the dumbest things like decrease the padding on the sidebar by half because I'm too lazy to waste. I don't read the diffs anymore, and when I get error messages, I just copy and paste them with no comment. Usually that fixes it. The code grows beyond my usual comprehension. I'd have to really read through it for a while. Sometimes the LLMs can't fix a bug, so I just work around it or ask for random changes until it goes away. It's not too bad for throwaway weekend projects, but still quite amusing. I'm building a project or web app, but it's not really coding. I just see stuff, say stuff, run stuff, and copy and paste stuff, and it mostly works. I got to take my readers off. That is, when you think about it that way, this is the HAL, right? That, what is it, the HAL 2000 of the Space Odyssey movie? I still have yet to see that movie. But now, the reason why I'm really excited to talk to you about this, Paul, is because you have been doing vibe coding. Tell me about, Paul, what are your thoughts about vibe coding? What have been your experiences with it?
Well, in a way, ask me what I could do a few months ago, which is not coding. And what can I do today? Oh, sorry, vibe coding. It's,
Very nice.
I feel like it's like I'm with the cool kids now. It's been, I always had to rely on, for any kind of prototype or whatever I need to do, I needed to talk to like a developer or like the designer and stuff. And now I can just do it myself. And uh, it's been absolutely fantastic. I've posted like a while ago, like on LinkedIn. I saw this article in the Guardian about like how some reporter from the Guardian had tried to. Uh, he did a kind of test and had a bunch of people try to recreate a Pac-Man game using vibe coding, and
Yes.
using AI. And he basically said like, well, it all looked a bit wonky, and therefore like AI is maybe not good enough. And I was like, I don't really believe it. So I went to my by then the first vibe coding platform I really dove into was Lovable,
Yes.
and I got it done in like 3 prompts, and it actually worked quite well. I won, so I guess the game is good. And now lately, I was like, I can do this a little bit better, and I just got Visual Studio Code. I got my $10 subscription to Microsoft Copilot with it, and I started to create a Pac-Man game. And it took me like 45 minutes, and I managed to push it to GitHub, and I managed to put it live on a website. So I'm like, this is bizarre. I
Can we
didn't learn how to
link to
code.
that?
Huh?
Can we link to that in the description below? I think
No,
people would love to
because
see
I
it.
completely screwed it up because because I recommitted the code and then I forgot to do a version history.
Can't you
Um,
just put in a vibe comment that says, "Hey, just fix it"?
I vibe crushed it.
No, and so
So
now
I
back
also
to that
learned
art.
that you
Yeah.
need to actually have some basic skills of a developer and some, I guess, some more like basic process routines. So there's a couple of fun stuff that they build into these platforms. Like if you have these ads, these AI, for example, most of them will have like you can go into like ask mode and you can go into edit mode, or as I love how Lovable calls it, YOLO mode.
Oh, gee. All right. Yep.
Oh,
That's
sorry, that's
fine. Totally
YOLO
fine.
mode, which
Yeah.
means you just give it a prompt and it can ruin everything, but who cares? But you have like
Well, you
these
can
ask
always
functions.
undo.
Huh?
You can always undo.
not necessarily, because you make quite a bit of changes across a bunch of different files sometimes. So
Control C Z can't save me for this.
actually, you know what? I haven't tried Control Command Z.
I'm gonna
I
try something.
I because it was just so messed up, and I think specifically in Lovable, you couldn't really get into the code. But then in Visual
Yep.
Studio Code, I can, so I can definitely like revert back. But actually, the key is just versioning history, which me as a product leader, but not a developer, like I know versioning is important, obviously, but me getting started just like that, it's like,
Yeah.
hey, what could possibly go wrong? And there you go. But these
Not bad.
these tools are amazing, and now I'm building websites. I basically now I'm like fantastic. I can finally ditch WordPress. I
Yep.
started to use a bit of Wix, um, but now I'm just going to code my own website and just push it live directly, and I feel much more like a developer.
See, I can't get away from WordPress. I love WordPress. I've always been a huge favor of WordPress. I'm excited to see how these tools work. Lovable, I've used myself, but only really for building user interfaces to try and just convey a story or an example. To the point, though, you said that article from the Guardian. You were mentioning that these developers tried to build a Pac-Man game. If I remember correctly, like you said, the Pac-Man game didn't really work out. And the article was really like detrimental to the process, saying it ain't there yet. This is garbage. It was kind of negative, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was, and like I find it when I see people like posted like, well, and I see a lot of examples out there where people say like, well, AI cannot do math properly, so therefore it's not good. But then,
Yeah.
what about if you just don't use it for math and just use it for things it's actually good
Yep.
at? It's good at coding, and it's good at like, if I want to. I don't even want to make a change to like a file of like a website or whatever. I just want to like I
Yeah.
can just ask the AI like, where in the code, where's the snippet of code that's about this button, you know and it just tells me that, and you can then go into like you can go over that, and it's getting better and better. I think if you're too skeptical, like it's very easy, I think, to get into the
Yeah.
skeptical bubble in your own kind of echo chamber of, it's not going to happen. And I find that this happens a lot with people who stand a lot to lose, or people who are very afraid of change. I think, change is pain for people. And a lot of this is we're getting into a big unknown for many people who aren't following this closely. And I can imagine that there's something comforting about, echoing and just, kind of like amplifying the message of like, it's not good enough yet. The reality
Yeah.
is, while they did that Pac-Man thing, they had never heard of Lovable, and Lovable was just made a big marketing push, and it was so easy. I find this like every
Yeah.
day it gets better and better and better. And I'm not saying we're going AGI all the way, Terminator. Said it before, Iron Man, not Terminator.
Yep.
Sorry, Iron Man,
No, and I get that,
not
and
Terminator.
it cracks me up because there's so many. You're right. Use it for the thing that it's for. Great. AI is terrible at math. Well, the movie Titanic was an awful comedy. It wasn't meant for that. Use it for something else. You know what I mean? But when you look at these things, like yes, this Pac-Man game that was developed, it did a garbage job. But here's the problem. If I remember when I read the article, there wasn't enough information based on how well was the prompting, what kind of
Ooh.
model. I forget. It listed the model, but it was kind of, we didn't really understand what the prompting was. It was asked. Was it a user error versus a computer error? And then same thing is, yes, okay, this is early stage. If we were going to try and scale the flight apparatuses that the Wright brothers built for their first rounds, no, we would all say this is terrible. There's too much wind. I can barely breathe up here, and I can't get any in-flight drinks. And then this would have been trashed. You don't want to be on that side. You need to understand the potential. And as we're seeing this growth, even though I do believe we are way overhyped in a lot of these areas, I still have not seen the top of the potential yet. I don't see a ceiling yet. And that just, to me, it means there's only room to grow from here on out.
This is true, and actually, it seems that most of the progress is not necessarily the ability to code stuff. It's just still it's the ability to have GPUs to actually run all of this stuff. They're more like, but I agree. It's the tip of the iceberg, or like you say, like it's a path. We're still moving forward, but that doesn't mean that we're going to be exponentially innovating like this all the time. goes back to like the 1950s when the 60s when we put a man on the moon and everybody was obsessed with space travel, right? Ziggy Stardust, David Bowie, like all these songs, Rocket Man, Star Trek became, was comes from that era. We got obsessed with that. And if you look at the World Expos that we had back then, and all this creativity that came out, the Jetsons TV series, people thought in the 1960s that we're now on this trajectory of eternal innovation, and we're going to be in flying cars by the year 2000, right? And I have seen an example and a prototype of a flying car on some kind of Top Gear episode, I think, or Grand Tour. But we don't see flying cars going around yet. So it's also like it has like an asymptote, like it kind of flattens out at some point. There's always some checker balance that just kind of blocks that level of innovation until someone has another breakthrough, and then we go back into this growth curve again. So
No, that's true.
where I'm not seeing it flattening out yet. But actually, but you could arguably say like the capabilities of these models are getting better and better and better, but they're not improving as much and as fast anymore as they did 2 years ago when, like they could make major milestones. And now they're just getting, if they're 80% there, maybe now they're like 82, then 85, 87. Like, I mean, every week there's a new model.
So
But the application of it, because it's getting that good, now all of these different applications of AI are like just popping up like all kinds of like just weed in the garden,
So, a couple of things here. One, when we talk about innovation, you're right. It does seem like there's this idea of this plateauing, and we thought we'd have these flying cars when we, finally went to the moon. But then I also look at my grandfather. His birthday, still alive. He's 94. He's going to have his 94th birthday this month, and so he was born back in 1931. And I think about the technology changes that had happened since he was born compared to the prior 100, 1,000 years is such an exponential change that even though we don't see certain innovations happening, it's unfathomable as a human to have such social, economic, just experience changes as technology has crept so much further into our lives. Medical changes, vaccinations, and so forth. So I feel like because we grew up in this tech, it's harder for us to really zoom out and see how much things have improved or how much innovation we're really seeing. Secondly, what you had said about what these models are doing, I truly believe it. And this happened with the 4.0 model, if I remember, from OpenAI, and even parts, I think 3.5, both were delayed because of the significant amount of review and governance that had to be added and put onto it because of the things we needed to stop it from doing, the types of information it was able to give people. So not that there's any inside information, but I fully believe that the current new models are heaps and bounds more capable than what is currently available today. And we are purposely not being told because there is fear about what does that kind of power do in the hands of certain folks. So we don't really know where the true aspect of where AI technology is today. I believe a lot of that is kept under wraps at the moment until they realize a safe and profitable way to deploy those.
Well, there was an article this week about Emergence AI, and these are the folks that created this company an AI agent that can create other AI agents, other tools, just as it requires. And they created a thing called, I think, Agent Spec, I think it was called, where a system admin can put in boundaries of what an AI is allowed to do and what not. And they found that the AI agents that it creates, that it adheres to like 90% of the boundaries, limitations that are being set by the sysadmin. That's 90%. And now here come all the skeptics saying like, well, but 90% is not good enough and this is never going to work. But 3 weeks ago, that was probably 60%. And
It
now
depends on what the 90% is.
So if you extrapolate that a little bit more, like bet your ass in like a few months, or we can be vibe coding, or the agents can vibe code themselves.
So, well, here's the Here's the problem. I agree with, yes, there's heaps and bounds being made going from like what would be a 60% to 90% following the rules and governance and guidelines. But by the same caveat of that, I would not eat a bowl of cereal that was 90% not poison. So we really have to be delicate and understand what the 10% are. If the 10% is, oh, it's going to spell things wrong or it may misrepresent something, that's fine. If the other 10% is, we're going to release the nuclear launch codes of certain countries because somehow that got trained into our model, that's a big problem. And that 10% can make a big difference. Not to be the doomer, we have to be careful.
A vibe war. Maybe that's not.
That is a war I'm not going to win. I am too old for that.
I think you really are. But that's a good point. But again, it comes back to like, but for the things you wanted to use for, like you just want to create a web app or something, go for it. Why the hell not? It's a great starting point.
If you can tell me 90% of the application I'm going to build will function, I am fine with letting 10% of it fail and helping me debug. But then here comes the other side of it, where it is much easier. So I have a tough time editing other people's content, right? Whether it's like writing or certain types of pieces that I might have to review, because I understand what I've written, where I've written it, and why I've written it. How difficult is it? I feel developers have voiced this before. It's difficult to QA someone else's content, not to test to make sure things work, but to find where issues are, understand the way that they've written their code, and fix the specific issues on the lines that they identify. Now, how much more time will you spend correcting AI-generated code that you did not create, even though you might be technically versed in the language it's written in, to find the problems? That's a question I'd love to hear from a developer.
Yeah, but on the other hand, and I'm trying to look at the article here. I love that there was a company that created a Zen coder. There it is. So what's happening in this ecosystem of like coding AI is there's like the approach that Cursor AI did, which is where you have your development portal or something like Visual Studio Code, and the Cursor comes with basically, it's like Visual Studio Code with the AI baked in, right? Mm-hmm. Now, Visual Studio Code itself comes with Microsoft Copilot, but you can also just use another AI agent to do the coding. So you also have external ones. So there's different business models coming up. And one of those new ones is Zencoder. And why I'm talking about like what they created, I love the name. They created a mode called Coffee Mode.
Okay.
And Coffee Mode is when you're done coding, basically you switch Coffee Mode on and it starts creating all the test code that you need to run to do an automatic QA. And that literally is Coffee Mode. Is the idea is like you click the function, you go make yourself a cup of coffee and the AI will look after it. Because if you are developing, everything you develop, you need to also write the script so that this code can be tested in case something goes wrong. You need to be able to debug it. And if it's like with everything, right? Like the fun part is the creative, the actual coding, but then having to write the test script, really. Coffee Mode. And that's just yet another innovation, like, and I did it already like with Copilot without the Coffee Mode. I just say like, all right, I got like a file now that's way too long. I was like, okay, I'm kind of good. Like break this up into different chunks that make sense in different files that make sense. And it breaks it up. And then I say, you know what? Write my test scripts. Test the code. And it just goes and tests the code. And at the end of the day, like for me, when there's not like, there's no nuclear codes on the line, but just like a simple website, I look at the result and the result looks good. I click through the website and like, yep, this is pretty much what it is. There you go. Like
this kind of reminds me of, as you're saying that, it makes me think of potentially vibe testing. And all I can think about is that episode of The Simpsons. It's got to be 20 years old where Homer is working from home and he has the little drinking bird pressing the yes key on his keyboard. You remember that?
Yes.
And then ended up failing and then caused a nuclear reaction. That as soon as you said that, first thing that popped into my head, where's the any key? Paul, thank you very much. It was really exciting to hear about all the interesting ways you're using vibe coding and these different tools. I have yet to really take advantage of them, but now that I've got my double specs on, I know I'm ready to take care of some vibe coding here. Paul, thanks again for joining.
Thank you.